The last time my guest and I sat down together, we were both still running our powder coating shops. We had the keys, the customers, the employees, the headaches, and neither of us had sold a thing. Today, that's changed. We've both gone through the process of selling businesses we spent years building, and it gave us a very different perspective on what a powder coating shop is actually worth. Because for a lot of owners, the business is their biggest asset. It may even be their retirement plan, but there's often no real succession strategy beyond someday I'll sell it. So in this multi-part series, we're going to talk about what selling really involves, what buyers actually look for, where values get created or lost, and the things we wish we had understood earlier. In this multi-part series, we'll get practical. What can you start changing right now to build a cleaner, stronger, more transferable business, even if you have no plans to sell anytime soon? Because the best time to make your shop sellable is long before you're ready to sell it. Get ready to level up your powder coating game. So welcome back to the Powder Coater podcast. I'm your host, Kim Scott, formerly of Maui Powderworks. And I have a special guest to sort of relaunch the podcast. She has also been on the show before. And I'm happy to welcome back and team up with Sandy Andrews. Oh, wait. It's not Andrews anymore. What is it? What is it, Sandy? What have you morphed into?
Well, first of all, Kim, it's really good to be back here. And yes, I was Sandy Andrews. I had Andrews Powder Coating for 25 years over here in the greater Los Angeles area. And I sold it a couple years ago, almost to the day. So, the last time we talked, we were both sitting behind desks holding keys to our companies. And now both of our lives have changed. And I think this is such a good time to bring a topic like this to the powder coating industry, because as you know, the demographic of people that own powder coating shops are all in the same position that you and I were in a couple years ago, where they have this business that they've built over half of a lifetime, and now they don't really know what to do with it.
Yeah, I agree with you. There are a lot of I think it's just a vibe going on right now in manufacturing. It's sort of a vibration. There's a lot of changes going on in the industry, not just in coatings and applications, but specifically in supply materials, right? Large suppliers are changing, and I think a lot of it is just the shuttering of the economy overall, but then within our segment, it's more shuttering. And I don't mean shuttering as in closing, but I mean, the shakes, right? And stuff. So, I wanted to introduce and relaunch the podcast with you, because I think that you and I somehow have tandemed into a cycle that kind of hit us about the same time. Now, the last time that you guys that I had you on, and let me share just so everybody knows where you and I were last seen. I had you on the podcast, episode 68. I will tag this in wherever we go and publish the podcast. We have several different platforms, so I'll make sure to include this. But we talked about certification and the day-to-day stuff of what it takes to get certified and all the things what are the certifications. It was very 101 based on just getting and understanding what certifying and getting certified is. And you did a very good job of that. I still could probably go back and listen to the whole thing all over again because there's so much to know about specifications, for powder coaters and just applications in general.
Right. It has a lot of good content that is obviously still relevant today and important if you want to differentiate your powder coating shop from, everybody else and try to make it a more valuable organization and eventually use as an asset that you can sell when it is time to step away.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think it's easy to, and I want to just add this to the stage. This is the title. The exit is just the beginning. Because as you can see over here, Maui Powderworks is RIP. And we're going to get into that whole segment, and that whole part of our journey that happened over the last 2 years, and especially since you and I spoke on that episode, 60, 61, whatever I just said,
68, yeah.
68. Yeah. So I thought this was an appropriate thumbnail for this episode as we're just kind of trying to relaunch the podcast. And I'm actually really excited to do this because I have missed the podcast. So many people reached out to me going, "Hey, Kim, where are you? Where are you?" And, you know, I had to be, I guess this is my chance to kind of explain what the last few months of recording the podcast back in 2024 was like for me. And I want to, I hope we touch on this a couple of times because there's an emotional thing going on when you're selling your company, but there's also a not a thing you do, but like there's also a consideration that you don't want to jinx anything, right? Um, and at the time that I was producing the podcast and doing live events with like 5 or 6 different coders, we were all having this really grand time. Boom, I ended it, right? Because that's me. That's what I do. So um, I was, I had to be very careful because I lived in a very small environment, but yet I'm also globally known. And I didn't want to just go out and blab, "Hey, guess what? Maui Powderworks is for sale." And, because so many things can go wrong. And we're going to get into all the things that can go wrong, especially our, Ross and I's special situation. I'm sure you had some special situations or contingencies going on. And you have to be careful as a business owner to just not throw it all out there. You got to have a poker face about it, because so many things can go wrong. And I can't wait to share some of the interesting and almost comical things that happened when we sold Maui Powderworks. But the bottom line is that we really just wanted to, keep everything, close to the chest. I didn't want to tell anybody what we were doing until I knew it had completely finalized, right? Because, you have a career in this business and you don't want people to be prejudging, right? So uh, maybe, Sandy, you can touch on your particular situation, in terms of, sharing or oversharing or not sharing enough, right?
Yes, I realize that these are very sensitive times for the business owner because they don't want, some of the things that um, we fear will happen is that somebody in the general public gets wind of the company being for sale and they automatically assume that it's because there's something wrong. And the rumor mill gets spread so quickly, and it's generally not the case at all. But
Hmm.
of course, you don't want anything like that to disrupt the buy sell process. And you also don't want to take a chance that your customers get nervous and start to look somewhere else because they have heard a rumor and are nervous about what's going to happen with the succession of the business. So, we do keep things very quiet, and it is with purpose. And one by one, we allow our most important relationships in and assure them that there will be a transitionary period and that everything is going to be fine. And it is. I mean, it was in my case. Everything transitioned great. And as the seller, I was very happy with the way that it went, and I'm um, assuming that it went. I mean, I know that it went great for the buyer as well, who was Scott Andrews, and he's still operating today. And um, I'm doing my consulting thing
Yeah.
now based on the decades of experience that I've had in all facets of
Yeah.
running that shop and then selling it.
And that's why I think this title is so perfect, right? The exit is just the beginning. And what we're going to do is highlight and talk about some of the things that you would actually need to consider if you are selling your shop, or even you're not even near, it's not even top of your mind. You know, it's sort of, maybe I have a broader view of economic trends, or I'm not sure. Maybe the podcast puts me in that position where I'm always looking ahead, right? And understanding the greater environment of where a business might be, to and where somebody's growth happens, right? Where are they in this growth funnel thing? Are they just starting? Are they been around for a while? Are they getting ready to sell? I mean, those are some of the topics we're going to talk about today. So why not? Let's just dive into it, right? Because we got to start somewhere.
Yes.
Whether you are expecting it or not, right? I think both of us kind of maybe got some signals early on. I know I did, but we were also facing, and I'm going to remove this now because I think everybody has read that enough. But, I think that we had gone through quite a bit of resiliency building because of COVID and the fires of Lahaina. And I know people have definitely, if you've listened to the podcast once or twice, you may have caught me talking about this. It was an all consuming daily thing to be in every day, um, it was not something that you could escape, because everything you did and everybody you saw, everybody that you interacted with, whether it was a customer or even a new customer, or a vendor or whatever, somebody on some level had been affected by the fires or COVID or something, right? So it's when you're kind of steeped in it for a while, you kind of get into a bubble mindset. And a lot of business owners on Maui are still, I mean, I just had a conversation with an old friend who reached out to me, ironically, it's been 2 years since I've left. And I mean, she was just telling me how bad everybody is over there. They're just living in a bubble. They don't know what to do with the economy. They're just struggling in so many different ways. So that was our situation, is this up and down motion going on with our business, that it was exhausting to be around, right? So I saw an exit. I saw a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, and I thought, okay, this is our chance. And thankfully it worked out for us in our, you know, so Sandy, your situation was radically different than mine.
Yes. Yeah, it was definitely different. We were on different growth trajectories at the time, and um, yeah, we we agreed that we needed to, for those that don't know, I was married to Scott for um, the entirety of my ownership of Andrew's powder coating, and um, when I had um, come on board with the involvement of the company, it was literally circling the drain. And um, our corporate attorney advised that we shut it down. And I just didn't want to do that. I'm a little stubborn, and um, I feel like when I put my head down to do something, I can really do something. And that's exactly what happened. And that little shop grew and grew and grew, and it outgrew two buildings um, under my leadership. So we were in one small building, we moved to a medium size, and then moved to a larger size building in 2018, which will be their final home forever. And um, our marriage ended up not working out, and it was affecting the business relationship as well. So we had an agreement. I actually thought I was going to be buying the company from him, as I was very involved with the company on such a deeply emotional level. The team was my team. The suppliers and the relationships I had with them were very dear to me. I actually still have relationships with all those suppliers today, just on a different level.
Mm-hmm.
And my clients were very dear to me as well. So I actually made a bid to buy the shop, and at the 11th hour, it went the other way. So stepping away from that shop was very emotional for me, and it took me a while to
Yeah.
deal with my emotion and my loss. Actually,
Yeah.
I was just really, really, really loved that shop and
I'm
everything
glad you're
that it
touching
did.
on that. I'm really glad you're
Yeah.
touching on it. And it's funny because we're kind of going right to the heart of, you know, what your dreams and aspirations will want out of your business, to the rawness of the actual event.
Yes. It's
Yeah.
it's something that we build our identities on.
Mm.
And I had run that shop for literally half my life. So, I stepped in at 25 and I stepped out at 50. It's all I knew how to do. And,
Yeah.
you know, that's who I was. I was
Yeah.
I was that person. So to become somebody different um, at that stage of my life was scary and new, and
It is scary.
uh, yeah, I didn't know what to do. So my husband
It's
and I
like
actually,
you have all this knowledge, but you have to almost kind of create a new facet for it, or a new avenue or direction with it, because it'd be silly for you to give it all up with so much experience. Sandy, you have incredible experiences, and knowledge base, that, I mean, you'd be silly not to get back into it on some level, some facet of it, because And the same thing with Ross and I, and we're traveling to other companies now and looking at their job shops and seeing how they do things and seeing how they're not doing things, and stuff like that. Although, even though our new companies are totally different in what we're doing, um, and we probably should address that now, and then we can get into the topics for today, because how you're going about it and how we're going about it are two different things, kind of two different things, and they're both scary and exciting at the same time, right? Because you seem like sometimes we feel like we're free floating in terms of where our capital is going and where it's not going, and stuff like that. So yeah, well, you start.
Well, I mean, I got literally pulled back into the industry. So I had taken a year off. My husband and I jumped on an airplane and went to New Zealand and rode mountain bikes all over both islands. And we basically just reset. And while we were there, it allowed us time to decompress. And when we came back to the United States, I had so many colleagues like you and other important people in this industry who are really big voices. And they all encouraged me to come back into the industry um, as a consultant,
Yeah.
because they could see that so many of their extended colleagues needed some assistance and help. And so my husband and I talked about it a little bit, and we
And your
dove.
new husband,
We
your new
dove.
husband.
My new
Yeah.
husband, Mark. So, and he comes from an interesting background as well. He was in um, global asset management um, for 25 years, and he did operations for them on a scale that most of us never get to see. So they handled trillions of dollars, and he performed operations for that company. And what we learned when we came together is that even though um, some of the specific, the machinery is different and this is
Yeah.
different and that, but the teams are the same and the processes are the same, and operations are the same. And
Yeah.
so that's what we're helping people with now. And we've got a pretty full book, and we're excited. We're really happy to watch others grow and flourish under some new perspective, and be able to really capitalize on. I mean, I made a lot of mistakes in 25 years, and it took me
Yeah.
several years, maybe even decades in some cases, to figure out what those mistakes were. And now these people can just like jump from where they're at to the next level without wasting 20 years in between those times.
Yes.
So, yep.
It is true, in the sense that you come upon a problem on the daily, you resolve it, say it comes back a few more times, maybe 100 times more, 100 more times. And then after a while, ding, but, so many times we as business owners understand what that solution is, but rarely do we understand the meaning of it. All right. And I guess that's kind of, I'll give you an example. It actually just popped up on Facebook where, you know, um, coders are, interacting with customers, and, say you put out a price for a project, or job or whatever, and then you get this, you know, complaint, or geez, it's so expensive or whatever. Okay, you need to decide right there at that moment. Even the body language, with customers it could be that subtle, like somebody
Yes.
just kind of twerking or weird, just, and, that is the moment. that you don't need that client. That's the bing, delete, leave, bye-bye, or
You've
increase
got
the
it.
price and just keep climbing, keep making that price go up higher and higher until they just walk away. You're not necessarily saying no, but you're not necessarily saying yeah either. and
Yes.
and it's sort of like when you get that repeatedly, you know, where you have lots of customers coming in and saying, gosh, that's really expensive. Okay, now you have a signal. There's an alert and then there's a signal, right? And the signal is, to me, the signal is raise your prices. It could be that signal. It may not. It could be like some other signal, right? But that's where when it starts to repeat over and over again is where you see a signal where you need to kind of stop and say, okay, do I just need to because I don't need these customers, right? These guys are, you know, in my way, right? With throughput.
Yes. They're
And
liabilities.
yes, because you don't have the time to really spend the detail on the job when you've got another guy. I guess Ross always says it this way. He goes, you never uh bend over, I don't know, what's the word? You don't pick up a dime, you step over a dime, or you know what I mean. It's
Yep.
I don't know how to say, but like you're just picking up little change,
Yep.
but
Stepping
yet
over
the dollar,
$100 bills to pick
the
up a
yeah,
dime.
yes,
So,
thank you. The
yeah.
dollar is out in front of you, like that's a signal. Like it's a signal for you to increase your prices. It's a signal for you to change the way you get paid, or your policies and stuff like that. And it's so ironic. Like the minute we got, well, I'll explain my story here in a minute, but when we got to this shop, um, we're starting to see those signals, and there's a lot of signals going on here, but we're in it for the journey, and that's exactly what I said. And now they've initiated, a price increase because you can't. It becomes this bottled up problem that, you know, a customer will put something on your Google review or something. Well, they didn't pay any attention to me, or they ignored me, or they this, they that. You know, you can't defend that, but you can defend your higher price, right? So it just is an easier way to go about it than other ways, right? So
Yeah. So let's get into your history a little bit because you're actually in North Carolina now. You did a skip,
yes,
you did it, from Maui to Vegas to North Carolina, but before you left Maui, you had to wrap up Maui Powder Works. And so
it
you
did.
went through the whole, how your buyers looked at your shop and the whole due diligence process and what they found and what you um, wish you had done before selling the shop. And these are the things that I think our listeners are really interested in. So let's have it.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, so because the external um, economy, let's just say the external factors of the business is really what was grinding us down. Just to back up, I had trained my daughter to take over my job at the shop. And here's another signal. Let me tell you one more signal before we get going. I I found myself, and you need to check yourself. Everybody that's listening to this show right now needs to check themselves and needs to check their employees too, because I got to a point where I was starting to see I was being very short with my customers. I don't know if you've ever been in that position, but I was pretty much the face, the voice, the everything of the front face of Maui Powderworks, because Ross was usually in the back working. And when a customer would come in, obviously the regulars I didn't have a problem with, but sometimes when it was somebody new, uh, you could tell just by myself, like on the phone, I was kind of being short with them. I didn't, I don't know what it was. I just didn't have the time or the patience for that anymore, or answering that question for the millionth time. Um, I had pretty much had just my rote of what I would say on the daily with people, but something had changed in me. I guess I had reached some other level. I don't know. And so, after COVID and everything like that, we were starting to recover. And so I brought my daughter in, and it took me a little while to train her because she didn't really have that much experience. But I was so proud of her. She had trained, I mean, she literally was a mini me of me, right? So, um, and then a week, so that the first week I left her alone, and she would check in with me every day or whatever if she had a question. But I was now going to work from home. We were going to hang on to Maui Powderworks, and we were going to launch Powder Lux. And I was going to do it from home, at least on the beginning part, right? And a week later, it was August 8th, 2023, and everybody's life on Maui changed.
Oh my gosh.
And what that resulted in, it was like I want to call it the 9/11 of Maui. Uh,
Yeah.
if you remember 9/11, if you were old enough or you owned a business back then, I mean, literally sales went off a cliff. And it was far worse than COVID, far worse than COVID. And I thought that was bad. And we lost overnight, we lost 30% of our business. It's not to say that there wasn't business out there, because we were functioning just fine, up until that time. But what it was is people got really distracted with, you know, um, helping others. They were helping family. They were watching the news. It was everywhere. It was everywhere all at once, and there was just a lot of distraction. Everybody's worried about everybody else, not worried about getting their automotive part done, or their, job, whatever their project is, their welding or whatever. It was really, really strange. And I think that after a while, maybe say about 6 or 8 weeks of this, and it was still continuing, we just said, you know what, this isn't worth it. Um, it's not going to come back immediately, so we might as well just take a breath, and we're going to take Powder Lux to the UK. And we did.
Mm.
Or Europe, actually. We ended up in Europe as well. And we just wanted to kind of shop it around to see what people thought of it. We ended up meeting probably one of the most ideal customers we could ever imagine. In fact, I'd had my eye on them as an admirer of their work for quite some time, but never said anything and didn't really reach out formally to them. But I knew who they were. And in a week, we had sold our first architectural level license, and they've been awesome to deal with. Mentioning Powder Tech Corby, they were so thrilled with what we did and how we did it, that they wanted to sign up immediately. So I'm very grateful for that. And it really just showed us, after this week on week of, bad news, sad news, crying on Instagram. I know I did that, but we did raise over $13,000,
Wow.
which we donated to a local nonprofit to help people. And yeah, we just said, F it, let's just go. Let's just see what happens. And it worked out great. So it really kind of opened our mind up to the world of how big Powder Lux could be. At that time, we were calling it Patina Powder Coat. It's still called Patina Powder Coat, but now we're rebranded as Powder Lux. Anyways, so yeah, that's, we had just finished our first, not our first live, but like several lives of the Powder Coater podcast. They were doing great. We were getting so many people liking it and interacting with it and everything. It was awesome. Thank you, fans. And I want to come back because that's what this is my creativity. This is my creative outlet. And there's people out there like you that need exposure, have lots to share and stuff like that. And there's so many job shops out there that need help, right? That need to
Yes.
be, so we need to build a community again. But it took it, we had some ups and downs with the with selling. The first thing I did was um I reached out to some powder coating friends and I said, how did you sell your business? What did you go through? So that was the, kind of the inkling of, but there is definitely a format to doing it that I learned. Sometimes I was, the cart before the horse, and we can get into that as we get into the episodes and stuff, or the segments. But um, yeah, I saw an opportunity. I took it. And so understanding that greater environment of your local environment, your local economy is key, is definitely a key one indication or signal to pay attention to when you're selling or when you're exiting or whatever. And this is I'm just going to say this because maybe in another episode we can kind of talk about the greater a greater trend that's happening in manufacturing and stuff. That's going to be probably changing here over in the next, maybe now in the next 5 years, with, and it's not just AI. I'm not just talking about AI, but just in general with manufacturing, there's a lot of changes going on. So it's kind of, sometimes coatings can be really boring and like not much going on, and then boom, a bunch of stuff is happening in the news and everything, which is sometimes pretty comical. But we had a successful live, and that's when we kind of started selling some signing documents and everything like that. And it went, overall it ended well. We got what we asked for. But there were some ups and downs and hiccups and stuff along the way.
Sure.
Yeah.
And along the way, um, I mean, your decision to, I mean, you actually wanted to keep it, and then you made a decision to sell, um, probably a year ahead of the time that you actually sold, or less. And did you find that during that year, I don't know how you prepped the company. Did you clean up your operations? Did you clean up your books? What did you do so that it looked right for a buyer?
Yeah. Well, yes, because we already knew that we wanted to launch Powder Lux patina powder coat in the future, right? We were always working towards that. And, you know, um, it kind of slowed us down to have the fires happen. It certainly slowed us down over COVID. Uh, and at some point, we just said, you know what, forget it already. We're just going to move on. I had a very pivotal, as I was telling you, I called and reached out to a handful of people to get kind of some interest, some insight from them about how their sales went. One went really, really well and according to plan, and the other one ended up backtrack selling. And then the person they sold to um, threw them into immediate debt, and then they
Oh
had to
my
take the
gosh.
company back. I'll tell you more details about that later. I won't tell you who it was, but I'll tell you some of the
Sure.
stuff they went through. And so I had kind of like this good and bad thing going on. I'm like, so you're never really sure until you're sure. But I did reach out to a local business businessman who's in the business of selling businesses in Hawaii, right? And he has a bunch of letters behind his name and everything like that. And we'd actually been working with him, um, you know, uh, a few years back before COVID and all of that, where we wanted to grow Ross's Maui Powder Works, right? So I had already established And it's so good to have established these relationships with people early on, very, very early on, almost before you even know you need to sell. Um,
Right.
you know, and you're one of them. You now that you're available for powder coaters, you're actually now one of them. And so I did. I reached out to this gentleman and I said, "Hey, how's it going? I haven't talked to you in a couple of years, but I just want to say, you know, hi. And what do you think? Do you think it's, now in my mind, I'm thinking I'm starting to see some larger bids. So I feel like I'm getting like some signs of life on Maui, right? Up until then, it's just been struggling month to month, so how do you do that, when you're in this build back stage and you're still trying to be profitable, right? Of course, everybody knows that you're in Maui and things are 100% for all businesses. So there is that consideration as well. But I asked him and he goes, and I thought for sure it was going to be building out Kahului, where we were located, in order to build Lahaina, because you're talking about a town that's been established since the 1800s, so it's not going to happen overnight. And I thought the infrastructure for Kahului wasn't even built up enough to build Lahaina back, so
Right.
I at least thought that through, right? And that meant opportunities, right, for powder coating, for welding, for building, whatever. So I was kind of going with that premise. Well, what he told me was something completely different. And I don't know how he knew it. I don't know what sources, but I'm happy to know that he was that resource for me, who had that lifeline to understand what the business environment was going to be for Maui in the future. And he looked at me or he called, I was on the phone and he goes, "Kim, they want to make Maui like Molokai." And that's all he had to say. It was a very simple, short sentence. And I said, "No way. I don't believe it." And he goes, "Yep, they do." And if you know what
Oh,
Molokai is called the
I
friendly
do.
isle, but it's not friendly. It's not friendly. It's kind of a misnomer.
Yes. And it's not populated.
It's not populated. There's no economy. They're constantly
Right.
struggling over there. And it was very hard for me to digest what I had just heard, and I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't I didn't know what that meant for me in order if I wanted to exit, because at that point I had decided to exit. Ross had been talking to me about Las Vegas, moving there and growing our network of licensees. And so I said, well, then we definitely need to sell and we need to find somebody to sell. So I just started preparing that, obviously the financials, but also gathering up and doing some deep thinking about what it is that we had to offer. And I think that um, I'm going to pop this up now because I think that that's pretty much where we're at now, right? Is analyzing, and it takes a lot of deep thinking because you're so busy with the day to day, you know. Um,
Well, and a lot of people think, okay, my business is worth X, but it's really worth Y. And the gap between X and Y is so much bigger than a lot of people think.
mhm.
And, those are the surprises that a lot of people are left with. So, the lessons that you and I have learned how to bridge that gap between X and Y so that, you know, the seller is happy, the buyer is happy, is um, it's something you experienced and it's a goal of most powder shop owners.
It is, yeah, for sure. Unless you're doing the generational route. And even when you do the generational route, it may not always work out for you, or it may not always go the way you think it's going to go. But, you know, um, it took me probably a month to kind of put all of it together after I had that conversation with that business um, enterprise seller. And, at least I think one of the next steps I did was I went online and just searched for just companies that had been recently sold or for sale and what those prices were. Now, these are, obviously nothing in Hawaii, but they were a mainland based, USA based companies that were selling. Some were just powder coaters, and some were manufacturing a product and selling it and powder coating it, right? And that sort of thing. Now, what I've noticed immediately was the difference between being a producer, manufacturer of products or fabrication and powder coating versus powder coaters only. And
Okay.
if you are a powder coater only, I suggest you really look longer, harder, and deeper at what makes you unique and different. Because that's where the X and the Y is really going to be
Right.
tremendous.
Yep. The guy doing car wheels is competing with 50 other powder coaters within a stone's throw of other guys also only doing car wheels. And the competition in that market is so severe and fierce that everybody's trying to beat everybody else all the way to the bottom.
Commodity coating is not your friend.
Yes, it's not.
And long story, I mean, not long story, but I'm just going to give you a little hint. It's designed that way. But I'm going to leave that for another episode because I have a very strong opinion about that after doing all these podcasts and doing my own investigation, I guess, or my own insights on that. But yes, I think you're 100% right. It doesn't even necessarily need to be rim wheel guys at all. Because if you think about it, guys that have been in business for 25, 30, even 50 years, because there's some guys out there that are in their 70s and they're still going hard on it on a daily. You have to realize that somebody that can grab a private loan or have an investor for $1 million, million and a half can put you out of business tomorrow. And that is scary.
Yeah.
Now, they may not know how they're doing it or how they're going to go about doing it, and they may not be experienced. They may just have the money to buy the equipment to put it in place to get those contracts that you already have. But it certainly puts a cold shower on your thinking. Now, what we did and at Maui Powderworks is, and what we realized, and this is funny because I didn't really actually realize this until after we had sold and I had digested what had happened to us. And by then we'd already relocated to Las Vegas, but I wanted to kind of put together a video to kind of explain where we've gone and what we did. So I did a goodbye video for Maui Powderworks, we sold kind of thing. And what I realized that Ross and I had done was we created a marketplace that there was no marketplace before. There was no powder coating on Maui, really. We had built that, created that, and built a community around powder coating, whether we were using social media for it or building up our website or writing a blog post or turning out a really nice, valve cover or in industrial job. You have to create your marketplace, and that's a key thing to assessing where you are. It's a good starting point and a good launch point for deep thought and analyzing who you are and where you are and how you're doing it and how well you're doing it. So those
You're
are some
exactly right.
industry, insights. from, people that have successfully exited, which is the nature of this show and why we're talking about it today. Because it's more than just numbers on a page or financials or a special account that you have that nobody else has, because somebody tomorrow could take you over tomorrow, and it just takes money. So you need to be very secure in who you are, what you do, and how you do it.
Absolutely. Those are really great. It's a really great bit of advice for somebody to hold close
Yeah.
to their heart. Yes.
Yeah. So let's see.
So, Kim, if you wanted the option to sell 3 years from now, what would you change today?
If I was still at Maui Powder Works and I was thinking about selling 3 years from now,
Yep.
um, differentiate, and but not only that, fill in what's missing in your market, right? So if you got a bunch of rim guys around you, and then you should start doing more industrial work and raising your quality and your expectations. And that may include buying new equipment. um, it may be going out and beating it on the street and trying to get a commercial account, or working with contractors to make sure that you do all of their powder coating because you're an exceptional coder. It's there are a number of things, but it could be different aspects of the operation side. So it could be sales, could be marketing, or it could be operations. You're going to have to make that choice, how you're going to differentiate. So obviously knowing your competition and your location, but also your demographics.
Right. And I just want to add that whether somebody is ready to sell in 3 years from now, or 5 or 20, doing all of those things and taking steps towards doing those things today makes it easier to just run the company today. And
Yeah.
so, then the owners are happier, the employees are happier, and the customers are happier. So, yeah, it doesn't take someone with a selling mindset um, to want to clean up operations and financials and the way they do things, get their marketing in place, establish themselves as a different kind of finisher, get those certifications, um, talk to movers and shakers in this industry and find out what you can do better than anybody else, and then do it.
Yeah, well said. And just like an Olympic athlete, they don't wait for the race to start practicing. You know what I mean?
Yes, I
They're
do.
building up to that, right? They're building up to that, right? And um yeah, I mean, so there is the number side, there is the you might have a partner. There's you could have some other silent investor that you need to talk to or consider. You may not own your building. um I think it helps to own your own building, but that also increases the price on the overall. And in the end, if you don't, then really you're just basing it on equipment. And that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of guys, because it's blood, sweat, and tears every day. And in the end, it's just sort of an assessment of your, not of your talents, uh, but more of your positioning and equipment.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
So, Kim, we're nearing an hour. So let's
Yeah.
leave these listeners with um, a little teaser about what we should talk about, or what we are going to talk about in the next episode.
Yeah.
And so they can tune back in um, and hear.
Yeah. I think some of the things that we want to talk about are, what are the first steps we kind of gave you an overview of that, but, you know, what are, who are the people that are going to be in your court in order to understand your angle or your entrance as selling, right? Because you can't just put it up for sale and wait for, somebody to come by with a bag full of money. There is going to be some kind of an angle that you want to sell it to, or a person. So maybe identifying, like later tomorrow or our next episode, we can talk about the type of person you're looking for. And we can certainly tell you who we sold to. And you need to be prepared for the ups and downs of it. Sometimes it's, you're constantly always guessing what the other side is thinking, the buyer's side is thinking. It's never really set in stone. I mean, it's hard to communicate sometimes, because you're trying to convey
Right.
your selling, and you're trying to justify your business and why, but it's not always conveyed that way. Or maybe their interest in your company is something entirely different, right? And that
Right.
can devalue you very much, right?
Yep. We'll talk about what they're looking at and what they're really not looking at. And I've had an opportunity to talk to a colleague. His name's John Mosser. He runs a boutique M&A firm, and which is another. The powder industry is just super ripe for M&A right now.
So
And
super ripe.
super ripe. And I got an opportunity to ask him what people look at. And I would like to cover that in our next episode, because it's not what you think.
Yes, it is. I know. Now, I didn't have access to that. I was pretty much just closing my eyes and feeling my way through it. We were very excited to sell. Once we had decided to sell, we were very excited about it, but we were not ready for the roller coaster that we were on. And sometimes you're already down this other path because you think you're exiting, and then guess what? Something happens in the negotiating, and it all of a sudden it just throws everything into
Yep.
chaos.
Yep. So
So,
those will
and
be
that
fun
definitely,
things to talk about.
yes. And I'm interested in knowing how that dynamic, I know you and Scott are very professional people, and I know that you did leave amicably, but I know there's an emotional level to it. And how do you talk to that person that, that is very, because these are not just someone you knew intimately, but also somebody that was a partner. So there's that other aspect that I'm really looking forward to hearing you talk about.
Yeah. It'll be
Awesome.
fun and
Yes.
exciting.
All right. Well, it's good to catch up with you. I am so pumped, and I'm so excited that you were my first guest back on the
Thanks, Kim.
podcast.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day, everybody.
So,
We'll see you on the next
bye.
episode.
See you.
Bye.